Welcome into my first NBA mock draft. I originally planned on doing these on my NBA channel, but I haven't had the time to dedicate to that channel, so we're doing them right here on the Blazers channel. We're going to be going through all 60 picks. Well, actually, there's 58 because some teams tampered. This is NBA Mock Draft 1.0. Anything with .0 on the end won't feature trades, so 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, etc. Anything with 0.5 on the end, such as 1.5, 2.5, will feature trades. I plan on trying to get up to 3.0. That would mean 5 of these mock drafts. And I went all out on the graphics for this series. That's how much I care about you guys. But if you want to show somebody else that you care about them, get them a Manta sleep mask. These masks are designed to help you fall asleep and stay asleep. They block out light, they're extremely comfortable, and there's a ton of different types of masks with special features that you can check out by clicking the link in the description box below. If you need to come up with a gift idea for someone, show them that you're thinking about their health, you're thinking about their well-being, you're thinking about their mental state, and get them a Manta sleep mask. It's an extremely thoughtful gift and something that everyone can use. So check out the link in the description box below and use the promo code Uprise for 10% off. That's UPRISE for a 10% discount. Thank you to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this mock draft. So let's jump into things. The first pick, you already know who it is. It's Victor Wembanyama, no surprise there. I've had multiple videos covering him. 7'5", gonna be a really good defender on day one. I think he has a chance at being an all-star his rookie season because he can get it done on both sides of the floor. I think he can make first team all defense his rookie season, which I've never said that about a prospect. That's how special he is on the defensive end. True game changer there. Then offensively, just a mismatched nightmare as he's basically a 7'5" guard. It's going to be super fun to watch him play in the NBA. I just wish he was on my Portland Trail Blazers. With the number 2 pick, this is where the draft starts, as it's supposedly a decision between Brandon Miller and Scoot Henderson for the Charlotte Hornets. And I have them going with Scoot Henderson out of the G League Ignite. He's the second best player on the board. I think Scoot can play better off the ball than people think. While his jump shot is a little bit questionable, it did improve during his second year in the G League. And he's also a good cutter, explosive athlete, so I think he can play off LaMelo. LaMelo can catch and shoot. I don't think that backcourt is as bad of a fit as people think. It's just Charlotte has had a really bad defense for the past couple of seasons, and having a backcourt with Scoot and LaMelo obviously isn't going to help with that. So the next step after this pick for the Charlotte Hornets would be trying to find a front court that can defend at a high level, because you certainly have the playmaking if you have Scoot with LaMelo Ball. With the 3rd overall pick, I have the Portland Trail Blazers selecting Amen Thompson out of Overtime Elite. This might be a surprise to people, but if you paid attention to the types of players that the Portland Trail Blazers have valued in the past couple of seasons, it's been high upside, athletic wings. They brought in Keon Johnson as part of the Norman Powell trade. They drafted Shaedon Sharpe with the 7th overall pick in last year's draft, and that is looking like a really good decision. And Portland brought in Amen Thompson for a workout, and I have a gut feeling that the Blazers could be looking at Amen Thompson with the 3rd overall pick should they elect to use it. I think he's going to be the best wing defender out of any combination of Scoot Henderson himself and Brandon Miller. I think he has the best combination of athleticism plus playmaking plus skill out of the 3, and I think that that's what Portland will value. Brandon Miller might be more NBA ready, but I am a little bit worried about his defense. I'm a little bit worried if he has the foot speed to guard some of the quicker players in the league, some of the guards in the league. Bigger guys have tougher times getting through screens. I don't know if Brandon Miller is going to be somebody that can navigate screens too well. And then offensively, outside of his three-point shooting, I'm not sure how his creation will translate to the league. I think he'll be able to get shots off. I think he'll be a good NBA player, but I'm not super high on Brandon Miller's upside. So if I'm Portland, I'm taking Amen Thompson at 3, and I do think, given Portland's track record, that they might surprise people here with this pick and take Amen Thompson as well. With the 4th overall pick, the Houston Rockets select Brandon Miller, and this is a good fit for Houston. You know, I'm not as high on Brandon Miller as other people are, but in the right situation, he could be a really good pick with some upside, but also a high floor, and I like the fact that Brandon Miller can play off a Jalen Green, a Kevin Porter Jr. if they keep him. If the Rockets sign James Harden, Brandon Miller could potentially start and help that team make a push towards a playoff spot. the Rockets are in a weird scenario. They have a lot of kind of misfit pieces, and they may be accelerating the timeline this offseason, maybe not. But Brandon Miller kind of fits into whatever they're trying to do there in Houston. He and Jabari Smith would give the Rockets a big forward combo that can really shoot the ball, and that would be intriguing long term. With the 5th overall pick, I have the Detroit Pistons selecting Cam Whitmore out of Villanova. Now, I have some worries about Cam Whitmore's ability to read the game at the NBA level and his ability to not have to rely on his physical tools, which were dominant in college, at the NBA level where players are bigger and stronger. But given his athleticism, given his potential as both a shot creator, I think Detroit could view him as a Jaylen Brown type of player next to a Cade Cunningham and a Jaden Ivey, a guy that can get his off-ball cut, play in transition, and then make a play with the ball in his hands. And given the playmaking that they have there in Detroit, Whitmore wouldn't be tasked with creating for others a whole lot, which is a weakness of his. And there were times where Whitmore kind of disappeared at Villanova. It was kind of a weird season last year. It was Villanova's first season after Jay Wright retired. But Whitmore does have some upside, has really good physical tools, and I think Detroit would bet on those here at 5. At 6, I have the Orlando Magic selecting Asar Thompson out of Overtime Elite. And this might be a little bit of a weird fit given that Orlando's building around Paolo Banchero, and he's kind of a ball-dominant, power forward, shot creator, playmaker type of player, and that's also kind of what the Thompson twins are. However, Asar is a little bit better playing off the ball than Amen is. He's a little bit better of a shooter. He's a guy that can cut. He's a guy that can play in transition. So I think Orlando goes with Asar here. I think he's the best player left on the board at this point, and Orlando isn't yet in the position where they should be drafting for need. They should be trying to get as much talent as possible, and if Asar can truly become a solid shooter, then I think he and Banchero and Wagner could create a really problematic 2-3-4 combo for the rest of the NBA, and I love his upside in general. I think he has true star potential. Being able to get that here with the 6th pick to pair with Banchero and Wagner does make sense, even though the fit might be a little bit weird in terms of having ball-dominant wings. With the 7th overall pick, I have the Indiana Pacers selecting Jarris Walker. And Jarris Walker and Taylor Hendricks are the two guys I was thinking of for this pick for the Pacers. They're both power forwards, somewhat similar in terms of being defensive guys that can shoot the ball a bit, but somewhat different. Walker's a lot stronger, better finisher. Hendricks is a better shooter, maybe a little bit more shot creation. So those two guys are kind of coupled at the hip there, and it'll be interesting to see who goes first. I have Jarris Walker going first, though, here to Indiana, giving the Pacers kind of a physical presence that they need. Miles Turner is more of a stretch 5, doesn't rebound too well, isn't the most physical player. Mathurin might end up being the starting 3 this year. It'll be interesting to see how the Pacers sort out their wing situation. Tyrese Halliburton isn't the strongest point guard. He's very skilled, great player, all-star caliber guy, but I think the Pacers need some physicality, and I think Jarris Walker would bring that here at 7. At 8, the Washington Wizards select Cason Wallace, the guard at Kentucky. So, Cason Wallace worked out for the Washington Wizards, and then immediately afterwards canceled his workout with the Atlanta Hawks. I think this could be due to the Wizards saying that they would draft him here at 8, and I don't see Cason Wallace going any higher. I don't see him going 5 or 6, and at 7, with Tyrese Halliburton and Andrew Nembhard, the Pacers aren't going to take him, so I think this is the ceiling for Cason Wallace's draft range. I originally had a different point guard going here that I'll talk about in a little bit, but after this news broke, I have a gut feeling that Cason Wallace did indeed get a promise from the Washington Wizards and will be selected there with the 8th overall pick. The Wizards need a point guard, a legitimate point guard. They drafted Johnny Davis last year with the hope that he could become a point guard. Right now, he hasn't become anything. He looked awful last season, not only in the NBA, but he didn't play too well in the G League either. So it's too early to write off Johnny Davis, but so far, he's not looking good. He's looking like a bit of a bust. So I think the Wizards might try and swing again for their point guard spot with a guy who's more of a traditional point, but also somebody that could really help them out defensively. And Kentucky guards, which Cason Wallace is from Kentucky, if you didn't know. Kentucky guards, when they've gotten into the league, have outperformed expectations on the offensive end. Tyler Hero and Tyrese Maxey are two good examples for that. If Cason Wallace can be a good offensive player in the league, then he's going to be a really, really, really good player because defensively he gets after it. Maybe the best defensive wing or guard in the draft. And pairing him next to Bradley Beal to help out. And pairing him next to Bradley Beal could be a win-now combination. It could give the Wizards a shot in the arm and really help them out defensively. You got some offensive firepower there already with Kyle Kuzma, Porzingis, Bradley Beal. The Wizards just need to improve on the defensive end. Cason Wallace could help them do that. At 9, I have the Utah Jazz selecting Anthony Black, the wing out of Arkansas. I think Black has a good amount of upside here at the 9th overall pick, and I think that's what the Utah Jazz will be looking for, as they have 3 first-round picks and then a ton of future picks as well. I like Black's versatility. Defensively, he has the potential to be a lockdown elite defensive player. He can pass the ball, solid athlete. He just needs to be able to shoot the ball well. But from all reports, he's a very intelligent player, somebody that gets after it, has a really good motor, and somebody who's versatile. And with the Jazz not really knowing what the future looks like, Lauri Markkanen had a great year last year, but a bunch of pieces could be out this offseason. Drafting a guy with some versatility to build around could make some sense so that they can go in different directions, considering I don't think they know exactly what the future is going to hold for their roster. So I really like Anthony Black. I think he'd pair really well with Lauri Markkanen as well with his passing and defense. I love him at 9. At 10, the Dallas Mavericks. There's been rumors that they're going to trade this pick to try and win now, but if Taylor Hendricks is there on the board, I think they take him. I know I messed up his name below. Oh well. He's a guy that can shoot and defend and protect the rim. He's a 3-and-D 4 with some shot creation upside. I think he could start next year for the Mavericks if they took him here at 10, because the Mavs could use some extra shooting, and the Mavs need some help on the defensive end, and Hendricks could do that at the power forward spot. He's athletic as well. I think he could be a lob target for Luka Doncic in pick and rolls, and obviously he's a pick and pop threat with his shooting ability. I love Hendricks' fit here at number 10 to Dallas. At number 11, I have the Orlando Magic selecting Grady Dick out of Kansas. I'm not high on Grady Dick. I have him far below this on my big board. However, I think he will go higher because I think a team will fall in love with the fact that he's a big enough player to play the 3, and he can shoot the ball, and he's smart, can cut well, just a really solid role player. I have him lower because I don't think he has a ton of upside, but for Orlando, who took Asar Thompson at 6 and has Banchero and Franz Wagner, taking a guy with some size and maybe some positional versatility that can shoot the ball and play off those guys and space the floor for those guys would make a lot of sense. So Grady Dick here, I think, is a fine pick as a roster fit. Just not super bullish on his upside. At 12, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder selecting Derek Lively II out of Duke University. I would be surprised if Lively falls out of the lottery. There's not many good bigs in the draft outside of Victor Wembanyama. It's a lot of wings, power forwards. There's not many legitimate centers. Derek Lively is a legitimate center that can protect the rim, athletic. I think he'll be a guy that can play day one, is a lob target, somebody that will play good on the defensive side of the ball, somebody that'll be an okay rebounder and just play those strengths. Now, I like Lively because I think he has upside beyond that. I think he has potential to become a 3-point shooter and maybe a little bit of a short roll playmaker, and that's why I think he ends up getting taken in the lottery. I like him as a high floor, sneaky ceiling type of prospect, and in OKC, pairing him next to Chet Holmgren could form one of the scariest rim protection duos in the league. You could be looking at the next Mobley and Allen there. At 13, I have the Toronto Raptors selecting Bilal Coulibaly, who plays on the same international team that Victor Wembanyama does. He's a guy that has reportedly gotten a lottery promise, and right now the 2 speculative landing spots for him are 12 to OKC and 13 to Toronto. OKC likes guys with long wingspans, some size, some raw offensive potential. Those are all the reasons why they took Ousmane Dieng at 11 last year, and Bilal Coulibaly would kind of be in the same mold. However, with OKC going lively at 12, I'm having the Raptors take Coulibaly at 13 because they also like their forwards that can defend and have some potential as well. I don't know exactly where Coulibaly lands, and I still need to watch more tape on him. Whenever I watch tape on him, I just catch myself looking for Victor Wembanyama. Where's Victor Wembanyama? Is he on the bench? Is he on the floor? So I need to truly focus on some Coulibaly film and get a better feel for him as a prospect, but he's a guy that should be a good defender and has some offensive upside and some length, and that's always an intriguing combination. At 14, I have the New Orleans Pelicans taking Kobe Buffkin, the guard out of Michigan, and I love Kobe Buffkin as a prospect. He was the guy that I had going number 8 to Washington, and if Washington didn't give Cason Wallace a promise, I think there's a legitimate chance the Buffkin could go as high as 8. I think that's the ceiling, and I think going 14 here to New Orleans is his floor, because I think it would be smart for New Orleans to move CJ McCollum into a little bit more of an off-ball role. But when you got Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum, if you get a point guard, you need a guy that can excel playing off the ball. You need kind of a well-rounded player. You need a guy that can get after it defensively, because CJ McCollum isn't a great defensive player. And I love Kobe Buffkin because he's well-rounded, not many weaknesses to his game, finishes really well, can play on or off the ball, has some size at 6'4". I think he'll be able to guard either guard position and be a guy that gets after it on the defensive end. And a well-rounded player like this, I think, could slot in as a starter day one, moving CJ McCollum to the 2. You got Brandon Ingram, Herb Jones, Zion Williamson. Maybe you go small with that starting lineup, or maybe you bring Herb Jones off the bench. I don't know exactly what the Pelicans would do here, but getting Kobe Buffkin, I think, would give the Pelicans some added guard playmaking, but also a guy that can play off guys and defend at that spot, which would be really nice, and would also give the Pelicans, if they wanted to, the ability to move off CJ McCollum in the future and fill that spot with Kobe Buffkin if he's up to that challenge. So I love Buffkin here at 14 for New Orleans. At 15, I have the Atlanta Hawks selecting Leonard Miller, who's out of the G League Ignite. He is from Canada, a guy that tested the draft waters last year and had a lot of buzz, but it was as a bit of a mystery prospect, and he took his name out of the draft last year, played for the G League. Now teams have a lot better feel for what he is as a prospect, and that's a guy that has some skill off the dribble, has legitimate size. He's like 6'10", 7'2" wingspan or something like that, so I think he has size to play the center spot. And when you look at his agility, he's a solid athlete. He could rebound the ball really well. He can put the ball on the floor and should be a guy I think that can become an average three-point shooter. He's super intriguing, and this might be a little bit too low for him, because that combination of skill sets in a player with legitimate size like this, especially in a draft where there's not a lot of legitimate bigs, Leonard Miller, I think, is going to be a steal for someone. And with Atlanta maybe finally moving off John Collins, Leonard Miller might be the long-term replacement for him at the 4 spot, and I think has a legitimate chance of becoming a better player simply because I think he'll be much more well-rounded. I think he has the potential to be a good defensive player. Players with that size and agility and a good frame as well tend to become good defenders, so I'm willing to bet on the defensive side of the ball for Miller as well. At 16, I have the Utah Jazz selecting Jalen Hood-Schifino. He's a 6'4", 6'5" combo guard out of Indiana, a guy that needs to become a better three-point shooter, needs to become a better defender, but given his size, his mid-range ability, he could end up becoming a legitimate 3-level scorer. I just like him as an upside pick for Utah here at 16. At 17, I have the Los Angeles Lakers selecting Jett Howard, a big 6'7", 6'8", small forward shooter out of the University of Michigan, and I just like Jett Howard's fit on this team. I think the Lakers need to go for a shooter here at 17, and the two guys I had them choosing between were Jet Howard and Jordan Hawkins. You could also maybe throw Chris Murray into that conversation. The Lakers had one of the worst three-point percentages in the league last year, and I think they need to make it harder for teams to guard LeBron and Anthony Davis especially by getting more guys on the floor that can make teams pay for loading up on those two stars. Jet Howard is a guy that I think will be a good NBA shooter from day one and would see minutes for this Lakers team from day one because he can help space the floor and make things a little bit easier on AD and LeBron. At 18, I have the Miami Heat selecting Keontae George, the combo guard out of Baylor. I think Miami could look to solve their point guard position long term. Gabe Vincent's there, but he's a solid role guy. Kyle Lowry's obviously getting up there in age. I think that the Miami Heat could look at a point guard here, but Keontae George really isn't that. He's kind of in the Tyler Hero mold, so he might not make much sense, but I think Miami, just with how many solid role players they have and the lack of bigs, because I think that's the one thing they could go after is some big depth. They're playing Cody Zeller and Kevin Love for crying out loud, but with the lack of bigs, I think Miami just goes for best player available here, and I think Keontae George is that. He has legitimate upside as a scorer. I wouldn't be surprised to see him averaging 20 points per game one day, and I think the Heat, with how they can develop players, will take a look at somebody with the skill set of a Keontae George and feel like they can turn him into that 20 point per game score. At 19, I have the Golden State Warriors selecting Jordan Hawkins, the defending champ shooter out of UConn. This is just a great fit. A guy that can run off screens, moves off ball really, really well. Kind of looked a little bit like a Steph Curry in college last year with the way he moved off the ball, the way he shot off screens. Great three-point shooter. He just fits into the motion offense that the Warriors run beautifully and gives them another legitimate shooter. I think the Warriors will look to shop Jordan Poole this year. Having a guy that can come in and replace him day one, that's a good system fit, that'll get threes up, would make a lot of sense here at 19. Hawkins has limitations as a shot creator, but in the Warriors offense, I don't think those limitations would really matter. He has limitations on the defensive end, so he would have to improve on that side of the floor, but as a shooter, he makes a ton of sense for the Golden State Warriors. At 20, I have the Houston Rockets selecting Dariq Whitehead, who is a player out of Duke, has some injury issues, has had 2 foot surgeries, one of them recently, won't be playing in Summer League, but is expected to be ready by training camp. He was a highly regarded high school recruit, and he was a guy that was a really good athlete in high school. Didn't really showcase the same athleticism, potentially due to the injuries in his freshman season at Duke, but he's a guy that can shoot the ball, maybe has some off the dribble upside. Kind of hard to tell really what he is because of the injuries he dealt with, but for Houston, with their second pick in this draft, he's just purely an upside play. At 21, the Nets have 21 and 22, so we got 2 picks in a row here. The first pick they use on Nick Smith Jr., a guard out of Arkansas who also dealt with some injury problems in his only college season, was also a highly touted recruit, looked at as a top 10 pick even through some of his struggles this year, but at this point in the process has fallen down draft boards and could fall even lower than this 21st pick. But Brooklyn's in a position to hunt for upside. They don't have their future first. They supposedly want to keep a lot of players that they already have on their roster, but with Mikal Bridges in their current roster, they were 12 and 19 last season, including a 4-0 series sweep at the hands of the Philadelphia 76ers. So the Nets are in a position where they need to hit on some upside in order to raise the ceiling of their team, because they're not in position to tank, and if they're not trading players off this roster, they're a lottery team that's probably going to be drafting between 10 and 14 in years where they have their picks until they elect to shake things up. The only thing that could change that is finding a star here at 21 or 22, and I think Nick Smith has the potential to be that star, given that he's a combo guard with some size, some craftiness, the ability to slash, the ability to shoot. Brooklyn would basically just be hoping that he was limited last year due to injuries, and once he gets healthy, he's a guy that can show more of the promise he did before he got to Arkansas when he was a highly touted recruit. And then searching for more upside at 22, the Nets select Gigi Jackson out of South Carolina, who was a number 1 prospect in his class Yes, #1 prospect in his class, reclassified up so that he could play in college last year. He's still only 18 years old, who actually start his first NBA season still only being 18 years old, and he's a legitimate 6'8", 6'9", with athleticism and off-the-dribble ability. He's very raw. He needs to read the floor better, needs to create for others at a higher level. He has a lot of weaknesses and red flags in his game. His attitude at times was questionable at South Carolina, but that was an awful team and he was young, so it could just be some immaturity that he has to grow out of, being 18 years old. So Gigi Jackson is a boomer bust prospect, the highest upside player left on the board in my opinion here at 22. So Brooklyn swinging on two guys with upside that disappointed a little bit during their freshman seasons in college is the recipe for the Nets in my opinion. At 23, I have the Blazers swinging on a guy with some upside, some athleticism. Olivier Maxence Prosper. He's been rising up draft boards. He's a player coming out of Marquette University. Legitimate 6'7", 6'8", with athleticism and some shooting potential, defensive ability. Could be a steal here at 23, as I think he has a chance to be a legitimate athletic 3-and-D guy. As I said before with Portland, they're not afraid to swing on risky prospects that are athletes, and Omax Prosper would be the type of player that I could see the Blazers taking a liking to, and the Blazers need to get better defensively. I think Prosper could have an impact there relatively soon. At 24, I have the Sacramento Kings selecting Andre Jackson Jr. out of UConn. This may be a little bit high for him, but I love him as a prospect, and I think a team will love him here at the latter part of the first round. And the Kings had the best offense in the league during the regular season last year, one of the worst defenses. Andre Jackson Jr., I think, will be a lockdown perimeter defensive player, and then he can also rebound the ball really well. He cuts extremely well, and he makes plays for others. He also excels playing in transition. He is a really, really good fit for the Kings. They play at a super high pace. They get up a lot of threes. I think Andre Jackson Jr. can help them out on the defensive end, and then be a guy that can push tempo when De'Aaron Fox is out of the game, be a guy that is dishing to these three-point shooters that the Kings have. And if Andre Jackson can develop anything resembling a three-point shot, that's the one weakness of his, then he's just a really well-rounded player, great athlete, and could be a guy that's a top 10 player from this draft. I think the Kings could take a hard look at him here at 24, given how well he would fit their system. At 25, I have the Memphis Grizzlies selecting Chris Murray out of Iowa. And Chris Murray's an interesting guy because he didn't shoot the three ball super well at Iowa, but we've seen his brother, Keegan Murray, come into the league and excel for the Kings. Keegan's obviously better, but I think Chris could be a poor man's version of Keegan because he should get better three-point looks in the NBA than he did in college, which is strange. But he shot a lot of tough threes. He was tasked as being the go-to guy, the shot creator for Iowa last year, and as a role player in the league, he should get cleaner three-point looks. So I wouldn't read too much into the fact that he shot 33% from the three-point line last year in college. I think that number should be higher in the NBA given the fact that he should have cleaner looks. Defensively, he should be okay. He's just not a high ceiling guy, but somebody that could come in and help a good team right away. And for Memphis, that makes sense. They were one of the worst shooting teams in the league last year. Really good defensively. Getting a four-man that can come in and space the floor, maybe slide down and play some three depending on what other defenders you have around him, and just be a bit of a floor spacer and help out the Grizzlies shooting-wise would make a lot of sense. At 26, I have the Indiana Pacers selecting Sidy Cissoko out of the G League Ignite. He's a guy that I could see going higher than this as somebody that has a good frame, 6'6" wing, can play make a little bit, attack off the dribble a little bit, solid athlete, just solid all-around player. Much like a lot of players in this range of the draft, I'm really impressed with prospects in this range. He's an upside play in my opinion too. I think he could potentially be a shot creator at the next level, knocking down threes as well, being able to play off the ball cut and provide something on the defensive end. So Indiana having 3 first-round picks and then the 32nd pick as well, I think it would make sense for them to go for an upside play here with Cissoko. At 27, I have the Charlotte Hornets selecting Ryan Rupert. He's a good defensive player, really raw offensively. As I said, with Charlotte taking Scoot at 2, they need to surround LaMelo and Scoot with a good defensive front court. Ryan Rupert could be the start of that. He just needs to get better shooting the ball. He needs to get better offensively. It's going to take some time there, but with the Hornets having a bunch of picks in this draft, they could elect to take a couple of projects, and also Rupert might be a guy that they stash for a year or two, given how many picks they got. So Rupert makes a lot of sense here at 27 to Charlotte. At 28, I have the Utah Jazz selecting Noah Clowney, the power forward slash center out of Alabama. He's a little bit of a tweener. I'm not entirely sure what he's going to become. He didn't shoot the 3-ball well last year, but showed the ability to knock them down occasionally. He could be a solid defensive big that can knock down threes in the next level. He could be a guy that's at the league in 3 years. Clowney is an interesting prospect to me. There's been guys selected in this range that are looked at as tweener bigs that end up becoming really good. I think the number one example of that is Nick Claxton, who was looked at as an undersized center, but given how athletic he is, just protects the rim extremely well and can switch on to guards. Clowney's a solid athlete as well. I don't know if he'll be able to come close to the rim protection ability that Claxton has developed in Brooklyn, but if he can become a solid defensive player, if he can hold his own at the center spot especially, and then if he can develop that three-point shot, he could be a steal here at 28 for a Utah Jazz team that are willing to take that risk. At 29, I have the Indiana Pacers selecting Bryce Sensabaugh out of Ohio State. This is definitely low for him. I have a feeling he will go higher than this. I just think you're going to have a couple of guys drop in this draft given how good the prospects in this range are, and Bryce Sensabaugh feels like one of those guys that could fall. He scored the ball really well at Ohio State, really efficiently, should be a good scorer, but he's awful defensively. There's a lot of room for improvement there from him. In terms of evaluating him as a prospect, it's all about how well will his scoring that he showed at Ohio State translate to the NBA. Will he be able to get buckets in the same way? Will he be able to get to his spots in the same way? I'm not entirely sure. I think he could fall down draft boards a little bit, but I don't see him falling out of the first round, and I think Indiana here at 29, with the picks that they got, is just going to take the best player available. Maybe the highest upside as well here with Sensabaugh. At 30, I have the Clippers selecting Brandon Podziemski out of Santa Clara. He looked really good at the NBA draft combine as a guard that can facilitate, just crafty, plays at his own pace, really smart player as well. The Clippers need to address their point guard position long term. They tried bringing in John Wall. That didn't work. Reggie Jackson didn't work. The Clippers' payroll is extremely high as well, so they're not going to have a ton of flexibility to go out and try and get a Fred VanVleet, for example. So getting a guy that should at least be able to play some backup point minutes right away, and Podziemski could make a lot of sense for the Clippers. I thought he would measure in a little bit bigger. I thought he'd have more shooting guard size than he did. He measured in a bit short. It was somewhere around 6'3" without shoes. That might hurt his draft stock a little bit, but given how well he looked at the draft combine and scrimmages especially, I think the Clippers would be the type of team to take him here at 30. Now let's look at the second round. I'm just going to talk about notable picks here, but you can see every pick there on the left. At 31, Colby Jones. I think this would be a steal for the Pistons, just getting a well-rounded guy who can play on or off the ball. Jaime Jaquez Jr. just feels like a Spurs player, and at the small forward position in the NBA, I have worries about his defensive ability, but when you have Victor Wembanyama and Zach Collins, who's underrated, behind you, there's not as much to worry about with Jaquez there playing the three, and offensively, I think he'll just find a way to be a solid role player in the NBA. Maxwell Lewis at 35 definitely feels low, but as I said with Sensabaugh, I feel like you're going to have a couple players fall more than expected, and I think Maxwell Lewis could be one of those guys. He has a lot of offensive upside, so there's a chance he could go as high as 15, 16, 17 range. But defensively, I don't think he's going to end up being a good player. And physically, I don't think he's ready for the NBA. He's going to have to put on some weight, put on some strength. There are some question marks with him. And then offensively, I'm not entirely sure if he translates to being a guy that's going to be able to consistently break down defenses at the highest levels. So those could be the reasons why he falls here to 35. Ben Shepherd is a guy who rose during the combine. He's the other combine winner. He's a legitimate wing with some size that can shoot the ball. Could be a contributor day one. I have him going 37 to OKC. Jordan Walsh at 38 to Sacramento could help them out defensively, just like Andre Jackson Jr. does, who they took with 24. Marcus Sasser at 40, I think, would be an absolute steal for the Nuggets. I think he could come in and be their backup point guard behind Jamal Murray from day one, because Denver really hasn't had a backup point guard behind him since they traded Monte Morris to the Wizards. So being able to bring in Marcus Sasser, a guy who won in college, a winner, a guy who can score the ball and can be competitive defensively, would make a ton of sense for them. Kobe Brown is one of my favorite sleepers. I have a first-round grade on him. I don't know where he's going to go, though. 41 to Charlotte makes sense. I think he'll be a good defensive player that can shoot the ball and be a little bit of a secondary playmaker. I'm actually quite impressed with some of his passing abilities, so 41 to Charlotte would make sense there. Amari Bailey would be the Wizards taking 2 point guards and just trying to solve that position long-term with Cason Wallace and Amari Bailey. I think they would look to trade Monte Morris in a scenario, or maybe bring Monte Morris off the bench behind Cason Wallace in order to give Amari Bailey time to develop. Julian Strother here at 43 to the Blazers is a guy that could fall down draft boards as well, but I think should go higher than this. I think he should be valued higher than this because he has legitimate small forward size and can shoot the 3-ball really well, and then when he's right off the 3-point line, can attack closeouts and knock down floaters. And defensively, I don't think he's going to be a good NBA player, but if you're looking for a 3-point specialist that can play the 3, that can also do a little bit of something when teams close out on him hard, Julian Strother is your guy. Keontae Johnson I really like. I'm glad that he was medically cleared to play. He had an incident collapsing in college when he played for Florida and has come back, was huge for Kansas State last year. They almost made the Final Four. He was phenomenal in that run. I really like him as a prospect. Bobby Klintman to Memphis is just kind of an upside play. There's a lot of buzz around his name, but he basically did nothing in college and is very raw, so it'll be interesting to see where he goes. Terquavion Smith to the Lakers at 47. Could be a sixth man scorer. I just don't know if Smith is going to be efficient enough in the NBA to be more than just like a two-way G League type of guard. He's definitely talented. He's just going to need to be efficient enough. And if he is, he could end up being a solid sixth man down the line. Seth Lundy at 49, a 6'6" shooter for the Cavs. I think they need somebody that they can consistently rely on to come in and just knock down the 3-point shot, and Seth Lundy out of Penn State can do that. Jalen Wilson at 52 to Phoenix might seem a little bit low, but he didn't measure super well at the combine, but I think Phoenix would value getting a guy that won in college, was a great player in college, can shoot the 3-ball a little bit, and needs to become more consistent from there, but can attack off the dribble a little bit and defensively should be okay. I think Jalen Wilson could be a guy that could come in and play spot minutes for a Suns team that is desperate for depth. And that is the rest of this mock draft. Let me know what you think of these picks down in the comment section below. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on any mocked pick that I had in this draft. The next mock draft will feature trades. I'm looking forward to that. And before I sign off, remember to get yourself or someone you care about a Manta mask. Good sleep is very important, so use the link in the description box below with the promo code Uprise for 10% off. Thank you to Manta Sleep. And with that being said, I'm out of here. I'll catch you next time. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.